Okay, so this door is, well, this part of it is done. And I went ahead and redid the little door here. It fits a lot better. It closes better. I wasn't happy with it the way it was. There's too much of a gap around there, and you could actually see the fabric through the gap. So I cut the door off. I cut all that fabric off. And I added, again, this is an uncovered door for the other one. I added a strip of styrene on two edges to fit it tighter, and then rewrapped it, put it back in, redid the fabric flap here, and it just works so much better. Opens up a little bit further, looks nicer, closes all the way. So I thought what I would do now is, as you can see, I started covering this one, and don't worry, the paint on my hands is dry. I wouldn't be handling this if it wasn't completely dry, but I just got done painting a lot of the body panels. So I got the first layer on this, and as you can see, I wrapped it all the way around, even the opening for the little pocket door here, except for this edge right here. I just cut that off flush, because a piece that goes here will get wrapped around. So what I wanted to do here is show you how I made the little door opening here, and this would be a good spot. I mean, I figured this would be a good spot to stop and show you how to do it, because I've got this covered, and actually, as I'm talking, I just realized I should have covered this one already, but actually, no, this will give me a good chance to show you how that should fit before you wrap it. See, right now it's too tight. Right now it doesn't even fit in. So obviously if I wrapped it now, it really wouldn't fit. So I'm going to sand off, not all four sides, but I'm just going to sand off maybe the front and the bottom until I can get that to fit in there nicely. And I'll also round off some of the sharper corners so they fit in there a little bit better as well. So let me get that sanded to the shape that I think it should be in, and then I'll show you how that looks, and then we'll wrap it. Before I do that though, like I said, I have been doing some painting. I did the underside of the body, and let me just show you what I'm doing here. This is a semi-flat black. I did the entire underneath, the entire underside of it, even areas that wouldn't be seen, like right here, that'll never be seen. But I just went ahead and made the whole underside. It's a semi-flat or semi-gloss, I don't know. I think it's the same thing. But, you know, I kind of consider that just the undercoating. It's just to give the inside a nice flat black look. I did the body, I did the fenders, and I also did the hood piece here, the entire underside of that hood piece, which that tape here can come off. I didn't want to paint the hinge. I didn't want to gum up the hinge. But I got the entire underside here. So now I'm ready to paint the outside of that with a gloss black. And I did the same thing with the fenders. I'm not going to pull those up because I actually still have them taped down to the board. So yeah, but you can imagine what it looks like, and you'll see it later. But the underside of the fenders, and I also did the door, the outer side of the door for this one. I went ahead and did the gloss black for that. And I'm not super thrilled with it. As you can see, there is some speckage, some dust in there. That's about 4 coats. Well, 3 nice heavy coats and then a lighter coat. Well, the first lighter coat, then 3 heavy coats, about 3.5 coats. I'm going to let this cure for at least a week, and then I'll go through the wet sanding and polishing and see what it looks like. I think most of that dust showed up on the last coat, I hope. So that's always been a problem I've had with painting, is getting little specks and dust in the paint, and it just makes me work extra hard to get that out. And this is actually going to be the largest model car I've painted. I also did a 1/8 scale, the Pocher Testarossa in red. And yeah, it's the same scale, but I think the body on this just has more surface area to paint. So before I do any more gloss black, I'll get that door looking nice. Like I said, I'll just go through all of the wet sanding and polishing. I really don't want to have to put a clear coat on it, but if it looks like it needs it, then I'll put a clear coat if I think it needs it. and I'll have to figure out a good way to, when I do the final coats of paint, figure out a good way to keep the dust off of it. So yeah, so we'll come back and see what that looks like in about a week or so. So again, with this one, let me move this one out of the way. So with this one, we want it to fit in there loose enough. So if you could imagine just one layer of leather all the way around. And the corners are on this a little bit sharp. So I'm going to take the corners off. And like I said, I'm just going to take one edge. And I've just got a piece of angled aluminum with some, I think it's 50 or 80 grit sandpaper. And I basically just do a few swipes on one edge, trying to keep it somewhat flat. I don't want to try to rock it this way. I want to keep the edge flat. And again, take off a corner. That goes really quick, so you got to be careful not to take that corner off too quickly. And we'll do the bottom edge. Again, I'm not going to do a whole lot. I want to do a little bit and see what it looks like. After I do that, where's my, there it is, my blade of X-Acto. So we'll just go through and scrape. That'll get the little strings off the edge. We'll kind of clean up the edge a bit. And we'll see how it fits. Now this is a new blade I just put on it, so I got to be careful not to stab myself or poke myself. I put a new blade on it for a project I'm working on for the Starfighter. And actually, that's right over here. I don't know if any of you guys are watching or following my Starfighter build, but I started building the base. And what I'm doing is cutting out areas that I want to be etched away. And so I had to get a new sharp blade to start cutting some of that detail out. But anyways, this is more on this if you're watching my Starfighter build. So anyways, we'll just see how that fits in here now. And it's still tight. I mean, like I said, I would rather take my time and take too little off each time instead of really go nuts and take too much. So I'll do this off camera and I'll show you what it looks like when I think it fits good enough. All right, so it's getting close. I just wanted to stop here and show you what it's looking like. So if we put that in there, you can see it does fit. And there's a little bit of a gap all the way around. And like I said, you don't want it to be too big. You just want it to be just tight enough to where when it's wrapped with leather, it fits in there nice and tight. Now, one way to tell if you're far enough or not, take a scrap piece of leather on the back side and try to fit the door in and push it through and see if it pushes through too tight or just right. And right now that's just a little bit too tight. So I'm just going to take a little bit more. I'm going to take a little bit more off on, say, maybe the front and the bottom. And if you're afraid of taking too much off, what you could do is take a piece of masking tape and just tape off like a little bit. And that you could use that as a guide to kind of, so you don't take off too much at a time. That way you don't lose track of how much you've taken off. And but I've kind of gotten a feel for how many swipes of this will take off not enough or too much. And of course, now that I said that, it's probably too small now. So we'll just kind of see how that goes. And come on. It's much better, but it's still just a little bit too tight. I mean, it's almost pushing through nicely, but I think I'm just going to take a little bit more off of the bottom. Like I said, I'll do this off camera. You get the idea here, so I'll show you what it looks like when it's done or ready. All right, and that is the fit we're looking for. It's nice and tight all the way around. Not too tight to push in there. I could push it all the way through if I wanted to. So the next step is to just glue this onto here and then wrap the edges around. So let me get that done and we'll show you what it looks like after that. All right, so there's the door fitted. Corners got a little more rounded than I planned on, but once the back is on, you know, you're only seeing light through there because there's a white towel behind there, but once the back's on, you won't see that. So next up, just pop that out, and as you can see, it goes in nicely. No big major gaps. Next step is to put the little knob on. Oh, and one thing, cut the hole for that before you wrap it over, because as I learned in the last one, it's can be difficult finding the hole if it's completely covered on both sides. So this just threads in, and that guy in there. And then after this, we can start cutting the fabric to actually make this into a pocket. That's a little, let me see. I was using this. I hate using pliers, but that was starting to hurt my fingers a little bit. Just careful not to squeeze too hard. Don't over tighten it. You don't want to strip the threads out. And that's about right. All right, make some fabric cut and we'll show you how to make the pocket. All right, so this is the fabric that they use for the top of the car. And as you can see, the panels are kind of pre-cut. You just have to trim a bit. The piece that we need for the door pocket is right here. So I'm just going to snip this one out. And the shape of it is a little odd. I mean, I guess it works if you're doing it the way Pocher tells you to. But like I said, when you do it that way, the little door pocket doesn't have any sides. So it just, for me, seems a little bit odd. So there's that, and that corner is folding up a bit. So I'll show you how I believe they intended this to work, but we'll also need some scrap pieces. So this part right here is going to be scrap, so I can cut that out. And this is one thing I think I'm looking forward to doing the top. I mean, I don't know. I can see it going either way. I can see it kind of looking nice if done right, or just being a complete nightmare to get it to look right. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes soon enough, I guess. And again, I'm just cutting another piece of scrap out that I may need, and we'll put the rest of this away for later. Okay, so I'm going to push this in. Now again, if you were to do this the way the kit told you to, the leather here would all be one flap. So the leather here kind of acts as the hinge. I didn't want to do that because if I would have done it that way, then either this edge, well actually both edges, that edge wouldn't be wrapped nice. You would have like a cut edge of leather showing. And same with the edge around here, you just have a cut edge of leather showing. And I really didn't want that. So with that in place, and friction just kind of holds it in, if it's a little bit loose on yours, you can just take some low stick tape and put over here. Don't use anything too aggressive, obviously. That's what it looks like on the backside. And the piece that is supposed to be used is this one right here. And I think what they intended to do is that got glued on over the door, and that just folds over and then glues along the top. And that's it. It was either like that or, yeah, it wouldn't be like that. And that's it. So, like I said, I'm not a big fan of that. I'm going to use this, so I'm going to cut it down a little bit. You notice that the fabric is actually a little bit wider than the door. So if I glued it on like that, we'd have some ugly frayed edges along the side of the door every time we opened it. So I'm going to trim that down quite a bit, like that much. And I'm actually going to cut it off right about here because, you know, I'm kind of on the fence about that. On The other door that I did, I just glued that edge down. And you know, that worked. I'll do that on this one. I'll just show you what I know works. I'm sure there's a bunch of ways you could do this, but the first way I did works, so I'm going to stick with that. Cut that down. Like that. All right. So it's smaller than the door. I'm actually going to pull it down a little bit like that. Okay. And I'm going to glue it on like that. Now there is some extra sticking out here, and I'll go ahead and trim that off a little bit. I'm not going to trim too much, but just a little bit here. Get rid of that and that. Okay. And I'll show you why I'm going to leave that a little bit long for now. So I'm going to use, now I do have liquid stitch. I'm going to use that later, but to attach that to the door, I'm just going to use CA. Now it will soak through the fabric and look kind of not too good, but that's okay because the next piece we're going to put on is going to cover that. And obviously we need to be careful here not to let any of that get into the gap of the hinge or into the gap between the door and the panel, because obviously we don't want to glue the door shut. So I'm going to stick that in, and I'm going to use, not my fingers, I'm going to use this to push that in. That would probably be a little bit smarter to do this not installed in the door. You know, as I'm doing this, I'm realizing, yeah, that's disaster waiting to happen. Make sure I don't have any glue on my fingers. I'm going to pop that out just to make sure I don't get any glue on that. And we're just going to press that down. And I just said 5 minutes ago I'm not going to use my fingers, and I did. That's okay. As long as you don't get any glue on the other side, you're okay. If you get glue on your fingers, that's okay. The only thing is, when you go to turn on your phone, it won't recognize you, so you have to put in your pass number if you have the fingerprint thing, because you put glue on your fingerprints, then your phone won't see it. Okay, so I do have, and that's dry already. Of course I said that and it stuck to me. That's mostly dry already. I do have a little bit gap here. That's okay. It'll get taken care of later. The next step is to cut a piece of scrap into a rectangular piece, maybe about that long, and I'm just kind of guessing. Let me see, let me go with the longest one, and those are almost the same length. I'll go with this one. Cut that off, and we'll square that up a little bit. And as long as it's taller than the door, you're fine. And what we're going to do is mark this. You'll see this will all make sense in a little bit. We're going to mark that here, the height of the door. And over here, we'll mark it the height of the door. And draw a line. Is that showing up? Good enough. Okay, so you know how I don't like cut frayed edges showing, so this is going to get folded down that way. Now I'm going to cut this a little bit, because right now if I folded that down it would be pretty much in half, and that fabric would be a lot thicker. Again, let me think about this before I do it. Yeah. This way that folded edge will only be a little bit instead of the entire width. Just trying to get a little bit of a crease in it, a little bit of a seam. I guess I could break out the iron, and it would have been smarter to glue that first and then cut it to height. But that'll work. That'll work. So next step, I want to glue that. This time I'm going to use the liquid stitch. Again, if you use a CA, you can see what happens. The CA soaks through and you can see it and it doesn't look good. The liquid stitch won't do that. And this is almost empty. So I'm going to scoop into here. It's also almost dried up. And we're just going to spread that on. I guess I should do this off camera, because this has got to be really boring. But I guess if I got to suffer through it, so do you. You could always fast forward though if you wanted to. And I need to replace that bottle before my wife notices. All right, got a nug. So we'll take that and try to get the glue off my fingers. And then we'll just fold that over. And that'll get even more glue on my fingers. Fold that over. And I'm going to clamp it, just because I don't want it to come undone. So I'm going to put that on a nice flat edge there. And I had something I was going to clamp that down with. This will work though. Just a piece of wood right on that seam, and get some clamps on here. Another piece of wood big enough. Yeah, it would be nice if I was prepared, wouldn't it? But I think that'll work. That clamp is fairly flat. And that piece of wood, you know, as long as it's close enough to the width of the door, that little door should be fine. So anyways, I want to let that set like that. And hopefully it's kind of obvious what I'm doing. This piece right here, again, I folded and glued the edge down because I wanted a nice seam showing, not a cut frayed edge. All right, and that's going to be the top of the pocket. That's going to go in here and make the sides for the little pocket when you open the door. And said, hopefully, I think that's obvious, but if not, there you go. So I want to let that set up like that, give it some time for that glue to set so it doesn't start coming apart when I'm messing with it later. And when we get back, actually I'll go ahead and, you know what, something I can do while I'm waiting. I'm going to go and put that door in. And one thing, you don't want to just glue that down, because if you did, the door won't open. Because when you open the door, it has to pull out a little bit. So here's the door open, way further than it's going to. Get a hold of this. So here's the door open, there's the fabric down. So watch what the fabric does. Right now that fabric's pulled tight. Watch what it does when I close the door. We get a little bump, a little ridge in it. So there has to be some slack for that door to open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of tape or block that door open the way I want it, and then I'll glue that edge down. And right there, as we can see, that edge is a little bit long. So I'm going to mark that, and I'm going to cut it off right there. and then I'll glue that on, and then I'll get back with you when I'm ready to show you more. All right, so I've got that piece of fabric that I folded and glued, and I went ahead and glued it to the door itself. We can pop that out so you can just see here it's glued to the door, and I used the liquid stitch, aka overpriced Elmer's glue. I don't know, maybe it's more than just Elmer's glue. But anyway, so, and again, I use that because CA glue will soak through, and also CA glue will make it much less flexible. It actually makes hard, kind of like fiberglass. So that's glued on, as you can see there. And so the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open it this way, on this side, and we'll open it about as far as we want it to open. And that's probably plenty far enough, maybe even just a little bit less, you know, like that. About like that. And we'll come back over here, and then we'll just glue those down. This one's a little bit easier because of the angle. Since this one angles the other way, it doesn't want to fold as nicely. But we'll just kind of glue those down, and then once those are glued down, then we will close this and make sure those fold in the other way. Actually, one thing that will help before we do that, just go and put the door back in. If we just fold this and crease it, we'll just fold this and press it to put like a little crease in there. That will help a little bit. A little crease like that and like that. Okay, then open it, and I'm going to glue it off camera, but again, basically you're just going to position the door the way you want it when it's opened, and then we're going to fold those down, and we're going to glue. I'm not going to get the glue all the way up to that edge because I want that to be able to still move a little bit, so maybe, you know, this much over here. And I'm going to use the CA because that'll hold it a lot better. And I may actually go ahead and just trim. I'm going to trim that just a little bit here. We don't want too much fabric sticking up here because the arm for the window is going to come down and it has to go over top of that. So I want to trim that corner off a little bit here. And again, I'll do the same thing. That one's not too bad, but let me show you what it looks like once that's glued on there. All right, so have the door on. And as you can see here, I just glued the edge here and glued the edge here, and then just kind of pressed it to put some seams in. So now when it opens, got a nice opening door with sides, and again, you can kind of set how far open you want that to go or not. Now the last thing we need to do here is put a piece of fabric on the back so you don't see the back side of the door here. So as you can see, you just kind of push it back shut again. So we'll just take a scrap piece of fabric and glue it to the back side, which will look like, I'll show the other one, which will just look like this. And just covers that up, so when you open that up, you see the back side of that fabric instead of the inside of the door. And as I think I said earlier, be careful of how much you get built up over here, because when you roll the window down, that arm here, and I know it's hard to see because it's all black now, but that arm will kind of overlap that corner a little bit. So you just got to make sure it doesn't get too thick right here, or it'll kind of prevent the window from going down all the way. So next step here is to go ahead and put those other pieces on. And again, it's nothing that you haven't seen me do other stuff. It's just cutting that styrene stock to shape, wrapping it and gluing it on, and that'll kind of make the door complete. So let me get some more done, and we'll get back with you in a bit. Well, I was really wanting to show you a finished door. I painted that a few days ago, actually about a week ago, and it was probably too cold to paint. It was like mid-50s, and I should have just waited, but I was getting impatient. And I went ahead, I might have mentioned before, I don't remember, when I sprayed that on, well, I went to the hobby shop to get some paint. And the guy there talked me into using the spray can with this. And I went in to buy some thinner because I had bottles of gloss black that I was going to put in my airbrush, but I just wanted to buy some thinner. And the guy talked me into using that, and he said, you can get a really nice finish with it. You just, you can pull that back real gently and just get a nice fine spray. Yeah, what a load of baloney. The paint drops just came out way too heavy. I mean, that looks like I put it on with a roller when I was done. So I just let it set for about a week. And again, maybe, let me know in the comments if you have any idea. Maybe it was just too cold, so the paint was too thick. Maybe if it would have been mid-70s, the paint would have came out thinner and nicer. I don't know, but I've never used this stuff to try to get a nice finish. I've just always used an airbrush. But anyways, what I did just a few minutes ago is I sanded this down. It would almost be doable. I don't even know if it'll come up in the camera or not. Right there. I don't know what the heck happened there. There's like a blue speck, and looking at it with a magnifying glass, it almost looks like a little chip in the paint, and that's the primer underneath. There's still a few swirl marks. It's not perfectly smooth and shiny because when I realized that that was a chip into the paint, I figured I was wasting my time trying to polish it up any better. So I'll need to respray this, but I'm going to wait for a nice warm day, which might not be for a few more months. But I need to respray it, repolish it. But what I did, I went through wet sandpapers, various grits. I forget what this is. This one's not labeled on the back. But this is kind of a coarse. I think it's like maybe 200 grit. So I didn't really do too much with that. This is 3,000 and 5,000 wet. They're sanding pads, wet sanding pads, which work pretty nice. I should probably get like an 8,000 after this, maybe. But anyways, I did those, and then I went to the scratch remover and the polishing compound, and then the hammer. And again, it gives me a fairly decent surface. I just need to, if I work at it a little bit more with the polishing compound, I think it would really come out nice. But like I said, with that little chip in it, I was wasting my time. So I'm going to put the doors away for, I don't know, however long it takes to get some nice weather. So until then, what I'm going to do is start on the what I've been putting off for the past couple of months, and that is the mother of pearl inlay for the dash. So let me put this away, let me get that out and show you what I'm planning on for that. So I just realized that this particular video is already like half an hour long or longer. So I'm going to change my plans, change my mind a little bit, and I am going to end this one here, and the next video will focus on the mother of pearl inlay for the dash. And I just realized, just in case you're wondering, if you're looking at the reflection of that, it looks like a bicycle. That's because I have my bicycle strapped to the ceiling of the garage, to save space. So anyways, like I said, I'm sorry, I just noticed that in reflection and it kind of distracted me. So like I said, I'm going to end this one here, put it out. Sorry it's so long. And then the next video will be finishing up the dash and hopefully finishing the interior. I know I said that probably 2 videos ago, but like I said, plans change. So anyways, as always, thanks for sticking in there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.